So I pressed the button. It says we are live now.
YouTube
Okay.
still scheduled for 8, waiting for Sugar Lab.
I started the stream, so there's usually a little bit of a delay, but everything that we're saying right now should be being broadcast to YouTube right now.
Yeah, it looks like we're live now. I can confirm.
Yep. It's been a while since I've done this, but I did do this once before, or a few times before. So yeah, first I just wanted to, say thank you to everyone who's watching this, either live or, in the future. So this is, our first online event. I probably in this format ever, but we just wanted to, have a few discussions, have a platform for discussing a few things. Today's topic is Sugar Labs past, present, and future. So we just, want to reflect upon the past, what Sugar Labs has done, talk a little bit about what, Sugar Labs is doing, right now, and talk a little bit about what plans we have in the immediate future, and maybe even get into the more distant future. We will be looking in the chat, so if you have any comments or anything, you can put them in there, and if it's a question we can respond to, we're happy to respond to those sorts of things. Looks like we have a few active people right now, which is good. I think most importantly, we just, or at least for me, scheduling these events, I just wanted to, an excuse to kind of get things started, so that we can have some discussions, like a good reason to do some discussions. Also, have something that we can point to in the future. We have a few other guests here. So my name is Devin Olabari, and I've been working with Sugar Labs for 10 years now, mainly working on music blocks. And since mid-January, I've stepped up to be the executive director. So maybe we can go around. Samson, maybe you can introduce yourself next.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Samson. Hope you can hear me really well.
I can hear you great.
Thank you. Yeah. I would say Sugar Labs is really, really quite really interesting for me, because I started as one of the student for the OPC program back in Nigeria. In fact, I think I still have my original EXO here. So basically, I started as a student. Basically, what that means is every single activity you're probably seeing in Devin's overlay, I probably tried it, played it, used it, thinking around it at some point, and then eventually joined the Sugar Labs community as a contributor. I believe I think my first point of contact then was Walter, and then the rest was has been I would say history. So it's been a really quite interesting journey so far. Yeah, and now I serve as one of the board for the organization. So yeah.
Okay. My name's Walter Bender. I apologize. No camera today. I'm a little under the weather, but I wanted to be sure to participate regardless. Super excited that we have Devin as our new executive director, and I think that just the representation here today of someone who was originally a student using sugar and having someone who's a passionate teacher, I think that combination is really going to drive the future of sugar. And I think it's also a testament to what sugar's done in the past. I'm one of the original members of the sugar team. I was part of the group at MIT that started one laptop per child. And when we were building a laptop, we also wanted to make sure not only did we give children around the world a great computer, we wanted to make sure that they could use that computer to really enhance their learning. And at the time, there weren't very many options. There was really just, some Microsoft offerings and some Linux, but it was most of the tooling for desktops was geared towards office workers, and we had a very different idea. We wanted to make it the tooling be geared towards learning, not office work, because children, although some of them might end up doing office work, they're not in school to become office workers. They're in school to learn how to be great problem solvers. So I'm not sure exactly how, when in this discourse you want me to delve into some of the core principles that we established in sugar early on, but that's my background in the early days. Although I've been working with Devin on music blocks for the past years as well.
Yeah, well, I have at this exact moment in the schedule that we, kind of delve into the history. I know, Walter, you're a little bit under the weather, and I was hoping you could, kind of be the person to delve into the history.
Sure. I could do I could do that right now. So
Yeah.
I think it's hard to talk about the history of sugar without talking about the history of technology and learning at MIT, because it really was something that one grew from the other. I came to MIT in the late 1970s, but already by then there was a well-established group of researchers looking at how does technology impact learning, both machine learning and people learning. I was one of the original members of the Media Lab at MIT, and Jerry Wiesner, who had been one of the co-founders of the Media Lab, said our mission was learning and expressing by people and machines. And so there was this long tradition of looking at that problem. Probably most notably, Seymour Papert, Cynthia Solomon, Marvin Minsky. They were the real drivers of that effort. And so I learned from them, and we were very much in the mindset of constructionism, which in a nutshell is you learn through doing. So if you want more learning, you want more doing. So we really emphasized an operating system was going to be focused on the users doing things. So a very active orientation. In fact, that's why we called our apps activities. They weren't just things to look at, but they were things to do. And we had been at MIT working on interventions around the world for decades. But with one laptop per child, the sort of the eureka moment was, we're going to take these things we've been doing all these years and bring them to scale. But in order to do that, again, we needed to build a laptop, which we did, but then we also needed to make sure that that laptop and encourage children and their teachers to engage in learning. So Sugar was something that we developed jointly with Red Hat and with a few former Media Lab students. And we took a Fedora base and built a new desktop on top of GDK. That's sort of the technical aspects of it. Marco Gritti was the Red Hat engineer who was really sort of the heart and soul of that side of things. But we had a few things that we built into the operating system that I think at the time were unique, and unfortunately they're not as prevalent in the world as I think they merit even today. One of them was this concept of that everything you did gets recorded in a journal. And the reason for that is that learning is not just doing, learning is also reflection. And so we wanted to build into the system, into Sugar, a way to ensure that the children, their teachers, their parents could engage in reflection around what was happening with the computer. So the journal, which was a brainchild of Ivan Kristic, was one of the key components of Sugar and how the Sugar operating system, Sugar desktop worked. So we learned a lot from colleagues around the world about journaling, about portfolio, but it really building that into everything from the base is, I think, a unique aspect of Sugar that I'm really proud of. I think it's really important. The other thing is that, in part because we were starting from Fedora, but because we really were quite passionate about Software Libre, free software. Sugar is free software. I used to say you can draw a line in the sand, and there are two things unequivocally that have to be in the realm of free software. One of them is voting machines, and the other is software for learning. Voting machines because they need to be auditable by everyone, and software for learning because you don't want the children to be dealing with black boxes. You want them to be able to look inside and really understand how things work. And at the time, there was sort of this, in the US, this East Coast, West Coast dichotomy around free software, Software Libre. On the East Coast, it was Software Libre, and the expression was, we weren't interested in free beer. We were interested in free idea, freedom, not gratis. On the West Coast, it was sort of morphed into this concept of open source. And open source, at least on the surface, was more business friendly, because open source meant you could look at the source code on your computer, but you didn't necessarily have a license to do anything with it. Software Libre was, yeah, you can look at it, but you also have a license to let you do whatever you want. And we felt that was really important, but we also didn't think it was enough. We took it one step further with Sugar, and that is that, especially for our users who are generally relatively new to computing, just to show them source code and say you have a license to do something with the source code wasn't enough. They wouldn't be able to do anything. So what we built was a lot of infrastructure, a lot of scaffolding in Sugar to allow our users not just to use Sugar, but to really delve into it and tear it apart and reassemble it in different ways to really be contributors. And at one point, in sort of its heyday with the OLPC project, 50% of the contributions made to Sugar were coming from children, which I think is still remarkable. So the idea that we built in the scaffolding to support the ideas of freedom and the ideas of responsibility that comes with freedom. So the children wrote many of the applications, many of the activities. They were responsible for maintaining those activities. They got feedback from their peers about what needed to be done, and they did it. So I think it's still unique in that regard. The level of engagement and purposeful engagement by the whole Sugar community to have the learners be owners and responsible owners for the tools they were using. So beyond that, I mean, it was really, we built into Sugar many of the activities that were already very common to constructionism. So there's several different logo environments inside of Sugar. There's graphical programming environments. There's a Python environment that allows you to learn Python, but also turn anything you create in that environment into a new Sugar activity. Lots of tooling around sensors and using the computer not just as a compute engine, but as something that's immersed in whatever environment you're in, activities around music and the arts. So we had many, many different mountains for the children to climb inside of Sugar, and lots of different opportunities to engage with constructing, but without being without dictating what that construction was going to be all about. So you could decide that you wanted to construct in music or the arts or mathematics or physics, whatever it was that you were interested in, and you could run with that. And one other principle that I think is really fundamental to Sugar, and it's a little bit maybe hard to get your head wrapped around. The idea behind Sugar is it's one or maybe multiple, but it's waypoints along the path of learning. Sugar itself is not a destination. Sugar is part of the path one takes when they're learning. And so the idea with Sugar is that almost every single Sugar activity, in addition to enabling the users to modify that activity, the activity also they have hooks that take you to something outside of Sugar. So you can go not just use the toy version of something, but use that as a hook to get you more deeply involved. So one simple example of that is with music blocks. You can compose in music blocks, but you can take that composition and output it in another programming language called LilyPond that allows you to generate sheet music and meet the actual musical world in their terms. So you're not just stuck in the Sugar world, but you can use Sugar as a stepping stone to get into the real world, the professional world. And so I think that's a really, again, something I don't see very often or very much of in software for children. But I think it's actually a fundamental idea in Sugar, is that it's not the destination, it's a waypoint to get you to the next thing. And in fact, when you're using Sugar, you can switch back and forth between Sugar and the GNOME desktop readily. So you don't have to do all your work in Sugar. You can learn about other ways of representing the desktop, other ways of working as well. So anyway, I think that's about it. I guess some facts and figures. So we started developing Sugar in 2006, along with in parallel with developing One Laptop Per Child. I think there were, every laptop for One Laptop Per Child that was ever built shipped with Sugar. So there are millions of Sugar users out there using One Laptop Per Child. Then in 2008, we spun Sugar off as a standalone organization in order to support Sugar on other hardware. So we thought that there's no reason to restrict Sugar just to the One Laptop Per Child hardware, to the OLPC hardware. So we made inroads into making Sugar run anywhere. And there have been a number of different follow-on efforts in that regard. So there's a version of Sugar, for example, that'll run off of a USB stick. There's a version of Sugar that runs in a web browser. There's a version of Sugar that will run on, for example, Raspberry Pi or other Arduino type devices, things like that. So it's a much more diverse community now than it was when we first started. So I'll leave it at that, Devin, and let you continue.
Yeah, all of that was music to my ears. One of the things that really, struck me was this idea of, the computers as a way of expression. I came into this as a musician and a teacher, and I didn't really have the opportunity until I started collaborating with others on the Sugar team to really understand what computation is. But as I've been working on it, I've come to understand it as like a mode of expression, and I just I think that's such a wonderful way that we can bring students. I found it to be such a great way to bring students into what we're doing. I did want to mention real quick, you know, if anyone's watching this and they want to see, you know, like more history stuff, I did spend a bit of time with this YouTube channel making some playlists. And one of the playlists is Sugar Labs history. So you can, you know, go there and you can watch, I think I have like 6 videos or so of longer talks, you know, where you can, you know, get even more on Sugar Labs history. Some other things that struck me about what you just said was, you know, constructionism, you know, learning through doing. I think that's really important. I mean, it's critical to education. You know, the idea of, you know, organizing things into activities. My son, who's 6 years old right now, you know, he's using the Sugar desktop, and he has since he was about 2 or so. And so he's, you know, added many things to his portfolio. I can attest to the fact that there were 2 things that led him to be able to read pretty well for his age. And one was that he, I think he was about 2.5 or so. And when I gave him, you know, an old PC, and he would, you know, walk around and see, you know, just words on books and just, you know, in the world around him, and he would type it in into the chat activity and or speak, and it would speak back the words to him. So that was one thing that, you know, helped him learn how to read. The other thing was, you know, me reading, you know, at least, you know, a book a day to him since the day he was born. As for music blocks, we're going to get into that more next week. So if you're here, I want you, you know, I encourage you to attend that. In terms of the Lily Pond thing, just yesterday I was leading a class, and I gave them a challenge. I said, okay, we've done a lot of short songs with music blocks, but this time I want to make a longer song. So, you know, these classes are about an hour long. I said, you're going to make a 2-minute long piece of music. It has to use action blocks. And I started with kind of a framework to help them out. And the phrase maker also helps them generate, you know, longer snippets of code, which is also music. And it has to be something that you like. And when they were done, we printed it out using Lily Pond as sheet music, and we played that on the piano. So, you know, what you were saying about, you know, not just, you know, the destination, you know, making tools that are in and of themselves the destination, but, you know, that they're hooks that can take you outside of Sugar. You know, you know, with, you know, that vignette I just gave, you know, it was, they started with music blocks. We went to Lily Pond, which has, you know, a user base of musicians. And then we went to the piano, you know, and we're able to play it at the piano and even, you know, sing it with solfege and things like that. And these are all the reasons I, you know, really gravitated towards Sugar when I first, you know, found out about it 10 years ago. Samson, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So what's the question again?
Oh, do you want to chime in about just, you know, the history of Sugar Labs a little bit?
Yeah.
Just like, you know, 2 minutes or so.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think Walter, obviously, like the right person to give that history. But I think from my end, what I would say is more of the practicality side of things, because my Sugar side was more of a user. I think, and this was kind of the the thing that got me so interested in in computer science and programming and the concept around technology in general
Just
was the fact.
maybe one question to give people some context. What year did you start using sugar?
I
Do you
think
know?
I think I was 8, 9 years old. Yeah, 8, 9 years old. It's like somewhere around there. Yeah, so probably 16-ish years ago. So yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, that long. Yeah. So yeah, so I just like what Walter mentioned, right? I was surrounded around multiple computers that were running sugar, and that was kind of what I understood, right? It was very different world where you get to do things that the computer is telling you to do, which is interesting. To be honest, my use cases out of before sugar was just mostly playing games. Like in Africa, we're very big with football or soccer in the US. And I think when I had the opportunity to get the Sugar desktop through the OOPC machine, I think that sort of changed my ideology around how I perceive computer, because one, it was the first thing was it was very, very different. So I think that spiked up my curiosity to why that was a little bit different, because one, I was a little bit exposed to the Macintosh side of things and a little bit on the Windows side. So that was kind of my first fully Linux based desktop. So it was very interesting, and the level of the way things were designed was just crazy at that point. I think on my end, and the same thing with my classmates, we kind of were using sugar on a daily basis in science and art stuff. Like for context, I was in grade 6, 7 when I used it. So it was more, I'm guessing I was kind of on the higher level of the grade side of things. But it was quite useful in class. I mean, in fact, I kind of got to use it more, paying attention to class, which is quite interesting. And I remember um, writing my first application with Sugar, and I think the second one was with EBM. And EBM was my classmate then in school. So, and then I think one of the thing that, in my opinion, and this is kind of coming from someone that kind of did drive Sugar for a really, really long time, was the one feature that was groundbreaking for me. And this is something that you see in today's web development structure, is the ability to view source. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Walter, I don't think even in today's standard, even in some other level of like Linux distros out there, I don't think you can easily view source of an application, right? In Sugar, we call it activity. So I think opening any apps, or in this case, opening any activity, and see how it's been built and be able to manipulate, the code using. I think there's an activity called the develop activity, which I remember using back then to kind of make some tweaks, and it was just so awesome seeing that structure. And then this is something that even in today's world, in the web world, the first form of learning, especially in web development, is just like going into any random website and just being source and trying to play around, the website to see the changes, right? And that just to show you how Sugar was way, 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 way ahead of the game in terms of some certain level of spike in interest in programming. And of course, I'm speaking from the level of programming, and there's like a lot of things in terms of like learning in the classroom, in collaboration. Internet was really, really crazy back then, in terms of how expensive it was. So, obviously, with Sugar, in combination of the one laptop per child hardware, it was a lot easier to communicate with your classmates in different places within school, collaborating within an activity. In fact, my first exposure to collaborating on the software was through Sugar, and this is something we do now with Google Docs in different levels, right? It's just the more, especially if you've been using Sugar for a really, really long time, the more you see technology now, you'll be like, oh wow, okay, I've been doing this for quite some time, right? And I think that's kind of to show how, the intentionality around, how things were designed from scratch just kind of worked. And I think this is something that we've seen across the globe. And of course, me being here is a testimony to that. So yeah.
Yeah, we actually with one laptop or child, we had a key on the keyboard dedicated to viewing the source code of whatever program you were running. That never really sort of caught on elsewhere, but it was very intentional to try to get the Samsons of this world to really understand the tools they were using. The other thing we did, maybe a little bit softer, I guess, is that we still provide hundreds of activities. We also have this expectation that sugar is incomplete. There'll always be another activity to write. And sometimes you write that activity just by using the programming environments, and sometimes you write that activity using the dev environment that Samson was mentioning. But sugar is incomplete and will always be incomplete. And I think that's actually a feature, not a bug. I think that there's always room for the learner to solve their own problem in their own way. And a simple example of this is that while we have a PowerPoint-like activity in Sugar, we tend to, rather than having the kids use PowerPoint, we have the kids write PowerPoint. So you can write PowerPoint in Turtle blocks or in Music blocks with just a few blocks of code. And that suddenly taking a powerful idea, because PowerPoint is a powerful idea, but taking that powerful idea and realizing that you can be the one that realizes that idea. It's not just handed down to you, but it's something you can realize. I think is really it's a great learning moment for kids to understand that. So there's this idea that sugar is incomplete, I think is one of its best features. And then the other thing that Samson brought up that I neglected to mention was this idea of collaboration, that we really wanted to make sure that it was really easy for learners to work with each other and help each other, share code, share ideas. So we built collaboration right into the desktop itself. Any Sugar activity is open to collaboration, and I think we pioneered a lot of the things that today we take somewhat for granted. That's one thing that I think the rest of the world's caught on to. So things like Google Drive, where you can collaborate with other people on your spreadsheet or on your word processor. Those were all things that Sugar supported long before and still supports. And then finally, just wanted to say that most of Sugar is tooling, constructionism, building things, but there are also lots of games. And the reason there are lots of games is kids like games. So why not give them games? So, and they write games too. A lot of the activities, especially early on, a lot of the activities that our children contributors built for Sugar were games, or are games.
Yeah, speaking of games, one thing I did with my son from a young age is, I would take Turtle art and I would make like a paint program for my son. So like one of the programs I made is called, his name is Kai, so it's Kai Art. And he could touch the screen and he could do different colors, and I made different versions of it. So I mean, which was kind of like a game, but also kind of like showcasing, that, this can be just, a family thing, or, but he also likes the games, of course. And he's been trying to make his own game recently within Music blocks, and I've been helping him do that. He wanted to skip right to making games. Yeah, the games are a big appeal, but then, you're not just stuck in the game at the push of a button on you can see the source code. So Claudia Urrea is trying to get into the room, and I hope she can join us. But in the meantime, the next topic is Sugar Labs, what we're doing now. And I'm the one who's going to, talk on or start this section. In 2019, we decided to, I'm right next to a classroom right now. I'm always, just one room away from, teaching kids most of the time. In 2019, we became, Sugar Labs, decided to become our own nonprofit. Myself, along with Alex Perez and Samson, Walter, Claudia, and others, helped us get our own legal status, get 501c3 nonprofit status in the United States. And we did that because we believed that we could, by becoming our own organization, do even more with the organization and reach more people. And that's, the hope that we've been operating under. Like I mentioned earlier, I started as the executive director in mid-January, and some of the things I've been doing since I started are just trying to get the infrastructure in place as an organization, so that our communication channels are open, such as YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, the various social media accounts. Now we have a Mastodon account, so that people know what we're doing. The other thing is making sure that the organization is financially sound, because finances are a tool for us to do what we do, and those finances can help us grow. And I just needed to, I spent some time just making sure that the organization as a whole was, had the that in place, so that we can receive donations, and we can take those donations and use them towards growing the organization and making more educational tools, training educators, how to not just understand the philosophy that we've been talking about, but how to implement that philosophy in the classroom, how to use these tools, as well as doing things like we're hoping to host our own Sugar Code-In every year, and that will take funds as well, to make sure that we have a platform in place, a way to market to people who otherwise wouldn't know about it. These are the sorts of things that we've been doing now as like an organization behind the scenes, and all of those things are important because they're going to help us. They're going to be the groundwork for future growth. Next week we're going to be talking about music blocks. That's one of the the things we've been developing now. I'm hoping that Lionel can join us for one of these. He's been working on Sugarizer. All of these things are really great, but I really believe in what we've been doing. So I'm trying to, in my position, in my role, in my capacity, trying to take what we have and just kind of amplify it. So those are our hopes. The hope is the work that I'm doing right now, is going to help us scale and reach more people with all of the good things that we've done in the past. Um, so I just wanted to mention that. I don't know, Walter, do you want to mention anything else about, things that we're doing now? Maybe Google Summer of Code or something else.
Yeah. So we've been participating in a program called Google Summer of Code now for, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly how long, probably 15 years. And what it is, it's an internship program where uh, students work on sugar projects over the summer. And we've got 11 projects this year. We're reaching out into a bunch of different hot topics. There's a lot of AI that's going to be incorporated into sugar over the next 3 months, which is going to be exciting, and a lot more focus on math. We've got a big program to outreach on getting sugar running in some other environments. So, for example, I'm a big fan of Raspberry Pi, and I think there's real synergy between Raspberry Pi maker communities and sugar as a tooling for making. So we're putting a big emphasis on that this summer. Um, Previously, until COVID, Google had also run a program called Google Code-In, which was for high school students, not university students, and we had we had a really great run with that program. It was really one of my favorite programs because you got really engaged students from around the world working on real projects, and they were learning a lot, and I think that Sugar learned a lot from them. But one of the things, and maybe that Devin is cooking up, and he'll go into more detail down the road, is we might try to revive Google Code-In on a smaller basis rather than on a global basis, at least initially. Although I'd love to get back to being a global program again for that, so we can start to engage the high school students the way we engage them through the Google program up until 2020. Um, yeah, Perry's here, so maybe we can hear from Perry.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, Perry, maybe you can introduce yourself first.
Sorry, I'm not sure what to say. But like a general kind of introduction.
Yeah, just a general introduction, but also go into, how you became involved in Sugar Labs.
Oh, okay. So background in design, but right now I'm currently doing ecosystem development for the Ethereum Foundation. Um, Mostly focused on like Africa and like the broader open source community. How I got into Sugar Labs, it was actually through Samson. Samson and I started speaking in 2017, I think. And then he was like an active contributor in SL, and I was trying to get into tech at the time. So I was like, hey, I want to like make more contributions to Sugar Labs. We had conversations around like GSO, Google Coding, and like some of the Sugar Labs projects, which was interesting to me. And then he introduced me to Walter, and then I just started to contribute and gradually just started to stick around the community and grow within it. Sorry, I was caught off guard, so I was not prepared for that. But yeah, this is like the little summary.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your design background too, and how you've been using that in the sugar world.
Oh yes. So I started out as an experienced designer. Then I went into like UI. Then gradually grew into like product design. Um, I think after Sugar Labs, or while I was still at Sugar Labs, I joined Walter at Tosero to be their first designer on the team. And then after that, I worked with a couple of organizations as well around design, basically just contracting and then doing like short full-time roles. And then after that, I started to get more involved in the open source design space. I joined this design organization, opensourcedesign.net, as part of the core team, trying to like advocate for more designers to get into the open source space. I did a bit of contribution to the GNOME project as well. But then at some point I felt like I had like a lot more like value outside of like visual designs. Wanted to like get more involved in like programs, community engagement, ecosystem. Since I was also kind of like doing that with Open Source Community Africa, a community that Samson and a couple of our friends are kind of like running in Africa to like onboard more open source contributors from Africa. Um, so I started to like pick up more responsibilities outside of design, and right now just like transitioning into a more program ecosystem strategist kind of role.
So Perry missed. I think there's she missed about helping because I remember we had some few deployments of schools back in our city where we do some sugar work. I'm trying to jog a memory a bit.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I wasn't prepared for the introduction, so there are just a lot of things that probably I've skipped. But yeah, we did like some installation of like sugars in like some schools. I think that was like in 2019. um and then we had something. I remember we had like some conversations to like get more involved in like, because Rwanda is like still actively using like sugar, like the OLPC, but then we didn't necessarily continue that conversation again, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Barry. And I've been, I still have your Sugar Labs designs. You created some different like materials for like branding and stuff, and uh, I've been looking them over. So no effort is wasted. You probably, I think that was about like 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, so the next topic is the future of Sugar Labs. I think we already kind of indicated a few things. Walter earlier mentioned that for this year's Google Summer of Code, and as well as what it's called DMP. We'll be exploring, or I guess mainly within Google Summer of Code, uh, using large language models to, as a tool for learners to learn about learning, and teachers to create, lesson plans and things like that. Um, we also mentioned, sugar coding, which I can talk about more. Uh, but I guess now's the time we can talk about what we'd like short term for sugar, as well as long term. Um, I guess I'll go first, talking about sugar coating. I've written up like a schedule of how it can go. I just recently applied for a grant, which I hope we can get. But even with the grant, we'll still need some additional funding, I think. But as Walter mentioned, there was Google Codin, which was a really great program. It usually ran for approximately 2 months in the wintertime. And mentors, people in the organization would come up with different, I think they called them tasks. They were kind of like challenges for the students to do. It was open, anyone could participate. They just needed to be between the ages of like 13 to 18 or so. so about, high school. And they would choose, whichever tasks they wanted to. There were a few tasks that, everyone could do, such as like make your first Git commit, or, make a, short, song in music blocks, or, make a program in Turtle blocks. And, you could submit that. And if you submitted at least, 3, you would get a certificate of completion. And there was also, like a competition component. So students that were, more ambitious, more competitive, could, try to get selected as like a top contributor by, doing, more tasks, doing more quality tasks, taking on, bigger challenges, and essentially learning more in the process, or at least building, more upon the knowledge that they, and the skills that they already have built, prior to participating. And it, I participated in it, as many years as I could until Google ended the program. And I saw that, those students really were learning a lot. And since this is all the Sugar software is, as Walter mentioned, Software Libre, free software, they could make contributions that would be merged into the code base. So one thing that I point to, because it's a, very, visual contribution, is the mouse character in Music Blocks. Was contributed to by a 13-year-old, and I believe she was living in England at the time. And I think moments like that are great, and they don't really, as far as I can tell, happen, many other places where, you can make a contribution that's going to be lasting part of the tool that, so many others can use. And so that gives that person, a sense of, that, what they're doing is important. And I believe that, helps the learner, do their best, because they realize, that, they're not just doing, problem that, is going to get a grade, and then be put aside. It's something that, is going to be a lasting contribution for many others to use. And so we'd like to, continue something like that, hopefully starting this this fall, but we do need, support, so I'm putting in for grants, if, any donations can, go towards, programs like that. But yeah, that's the broad plan for Sugar Coding. We're not going to do anything too new. We're not going to, it will be basically the same framework, but under, our umbrella. For the first year, we do plan on being a, more local. Google Coding was an international program. But our hope is, that we can do it, on a more local level for the first year, and then open it up to, more localities, in future iterations. Walter, maybe you could talk a little bit about AI, and some of the projects that we have for Google Summer of Code, and maybe some.
Sure. So, AI is a topic a lot of people are talking about these days, and it's something that I think we want to expose children to in sugar. But at the same time, we want to make sure that as we expose them to the power of AI, we're exposing them in a way that's going to have an impact on learning. So we're integrating it in a number, sort of experimenting, lots of experiments this summer. We're going to be integrating it into things like the PIPI program, which is the Python code generator. So we'll add AI assistance in terms of writing Python code. We're adding it in several different ways to music blocks to try to understand how AI might help someone with composition, with orchestration. We're looking at it in more mundane ways, just around the right activity to help children with the blank page issue. We're looking at it in the context of really, is this something that is going to, on the one hand, engage children, and on the other hand, cause them to think critically about the text or the music or the code that's generated, so that we balance the facility that AI offers with engaging them in sort of critical thought about what AI is doing and to some degree how it works. So we've got a lot of different approaches to it this summer. I'm not sure that they're all going to stick, but I think we'll end up at the end of the summer with some interesting new approaches to learning in the context of sugar.
Awesome, thank you. So I just looked at the clock and our schedule, and I'm realizing that it's about the time we plan to end the stream. And I have one note to myself, and that's to tell everybody watching, how they can, participate in the current fundraiser that we have. This is our first fundraiser as an organization. And I'm going to try sharing my screen. So you can go to our wiki, and you can go to donate, which is, if you look at the left tab, it's like the second from the bottom, donate to Sugar Labs. It tells you a little bit about our nonprofit status. It gives you a few different ways to donate via PayPal. You can send us a check. There's a campaign on Facebook, so that's a financial contribution. So that's one way you could participate financially if you're able to do that. Of course, getting the word out is super helpful. So if you're on social media, and you can, just help by, sharing a post that we have. I promise that we will have a lot more, communications, for, the rest of this month, and also, from now on. So, if you can just help us, share the word. Of course, if you want to contribute, to the code, I think we've always been, very good about, letting the community know how to do that. So get involved. If you go to the wiki and you go to get involved, there's a lot of information on how to do that. And if you haven't used Sugar, I do recommend maybe starting with Turtle Blocks or Music Blocks, and we will be talking about that next week. So it's going to be the same time, just 1 week from today. And I hope that Walter's feeling better by that time. But he and I are scheduled to, do a hands-on workshop. So you will make a musical square. Just a little spin on, logo, which is what Music Blocks is, basically based off of. and making it musical. So I encourage anyone watching this who's interested to come to that as well and learn a little bit about music blocks and how to use it and how to create something with that tool. So that's it from me. Is there anyone want to chime in with any other additional closing thoughts? If not,
yeah,
go
just
ahead.
I was going to say thank you, Devin, for organizing this. I think it's a good start to many more.
Yeah, thank you, Devin.
Thank you, Devin.